here I am working with a child in my practice. You can see she's laughing, and she's a funny girl. I'm beginning to feel and sense by touching her and feeling how she sits and how she responds to the invitation to move, how she experiences herself in sitting. And I feel she was pretty rolled back. Her pelvis kind of leaned back, and so I'm starting where she's comfortable. And that's what I invite you to do today also when you get on the floor and begin to move. We'll start by sensing and paying attention to and ourselves. And here I'm helping her sense and feel the shape of her spine, her back, relationship between her arm, her head, and her chest, and helping her to begin to explore some new and unfamiliar ways of feeling herself. And I believe that this beginning in a place that feels comfortable and familiar or safe, and where she can feel she's at ease, and I'm helping to support her in gravity so that she's able to sense herself. And that's, to a degree, why we do movement lessons lying down in this work. When you do group lessons, often we work on the floor, and there's a certain way that the support and the feeling of being supported and being without having to manage ourselves in gravity fully, we're able to begin to sense ourselves and pay attention to the nuances that we hadn't noticed before. You can see I was putting my chin on her fingers to kind of bring her attention to that she was lifting her fingers. But one of the principles I'm really working with as I'm working with her, and I invite you to work with today, is getting curious about how bringing your attention to yourself, and for me as a practitioner, I'm bringing my attention to this child and her sense of herself, her feeling of herself, how that invites greater awareness, obviously, and begins the process of discovering something new, opening the possibility to feel something new. So playing there with her, orienting, calling upon her to look, to try to see me, and of course you'll find in the lesson the movement of the eyes and the desire to orient is very powerful in how we organize ourselves. So it's one aspect of what we incorporate in the work. But you can see how I'm helping her here to feel the connection between her head and her chest and her back and her pelvis. In the hips and legs also. It's all there. But this is, I think, part of the mapping process. We're developing as infants and as children. She dropped her arm a little bit, but she's okay, and we kind of playing and going along. As infants and children, we must develop a map of ourselves in our brain. We must learn to sense and feel what's there. And that process happens through movement and rest, and through attention to ourselves, through bringing curiosity and a sense of play and a sense of interest in the quality of our own experience. And that's how I'm interacting with this child. So you can hear I'm bouncing her, and she thinks that's funny, and so do I. but it's, as you can see, it's helping her, well, I can imagine, I guess, helping her to feel the connection between her head and the rest of herself. And these are the things that children must discover on their own. And when children have difficulty, you can, by re-engaging in and revisiting these processes, you can remap or clarify the map. And as adults, we all come with our own injuries, our own histories that have interfered to some degree with our own process. And we can revisit that and refine that sense of who we are and how we can engage with the world. Here I'm working with her on this quality of reversibility. So if you approach a movement like rolling from sitting to lying or from lying to sitting in a reversible way, meaning you really attending to and exploring the nuances of the process and getting curious about stopping and starting and going and coming back, you're able to, again, refine this map of yourself in this complex action, and by attending to the quality of the process, refine your own sense of control, your own sense of ease. And then she came to her back. She got interested in seeing something, and she rolled to her back. So rest is another important piece. I edited this clip's been edited, so there's little pieces it sort of jumps around, but you can see she's resting, and that, I think, is an important part of the learning process for most of us, and not only for children with difficulty, but for adults as well, and people who are of all abilities. We tend to bring a lot of unnecessary effort into our action, into our movement. And the early learning, developmental learning process and sensory motor learning in infancy is really driven to a large degree by the child figuring out how to weed out and inhibit the unnecessary. And it's these extraneous, contradictory efforts that are random at first, and then gradually, as the child learns to gain more mastery and more nuance and more sense of control, they're able to become more and more skillful at how they use their effort and use it for what they actually want to accomplish. And for us as adults, that is the one of the primary ways that we can refine our sense of self and our ability to achieve and find ease and simplicity and comfort in situations and positions that might seem challenging to us. Here I'm beginning to bring her attention to this idea of her pelvis coming away from the floor, and again in a gradual way. So introducing this feeling of the weight coming onto the knee, and I'm trying to really get her to feel and be curious about her own shifting, her own the process of gradually moving the weights from one or several points of contact to other points of contact. And that's how the process works. And by exploring that in a reversible way, you can clarify these transitional movements, which then will allow her to feel more at ease and more engaged and more connected in those new developmental positions that she would come to. So coming to hands and knees, or or even learning to bring, for a child learning to bring themselves to sit, is part of how they develop the feeling of comfort and and autonomy, or being able to feel that they're happy, that they know how to get up and down, and that they got themselves there. And here she pushes herself out. She she had other ideas. And I think that, one piece of this work, and what I invite you to bring your attention to today, is how attending to yourself with a quality of care, with curiosity, with a gradual and gentle way of being in your own movement and your own lesson, how that can bring new awareness, a new and novel feeling and of connections, of relationships. And also, I think it's part of refining and growing in our ability to treat ourselves and relate to ourselves with respect and with acceptance. And it's this kind of funny thing where by accepting her and where she is and what she's feeling, and us in our movement lessons, by accepting ourselves and how we are and what we feel and what's actually happening for us, we're able to learn and change. And I think that's this beautiful connection, I guess, between this principle of novelty that we're exploring today and how it relates to these other principles that define or describe the developmental process, and particularly how it relates to acceptance. So here she was extending her legs and her feet, so I start bringing her attention to that, to distinguish for herself, to feel this straightening the leg out, forcefully, and then bending it up and bringing it close. And she thinks it's really funny. And I think, obviously I'm bringing a lot of variety. It's not like I'm doing one thing and over again with her. It's very dynamic and rich, and I think that's important in our process, in our learning processes. And when you're in the movement lesson, we'll be repeating movements, but I invite you to bring your attention to the quality, so that you can find something new in each variation, in each movement. And if you stop noticing something new, or you stop attending to yourself, then maybe it's time for you to rest. Here I'm waiting for her to get interested in coming up, and there she came. And she's felt herself. You can see she's much more forward on her pelvis, and I want her to mark that for her, and to feel this sense of uprightness, her back being more engaged in her sitting. And my hope is that by seeing an experience between me and this child, and thinking about and considering these principles, that we can bring a new awareness and a new sense of possibility to our own explorations and our own learning, and apply that in the movement lesson today, and also find ways to apply that to our lives beyond this work and off the floor.